I've started and stopped multiple side hustles, and there were times when I kept going on them long after I actually felt I should have stopped. And it's not because they were working, it's because of how much I'd already put into them. So, what I want to chat about today is a psychological trap that I think keeps a lot of smart, hardworking people stuck in things that probably stopped feeling right for them a long time ago. And it is called the sunk cost fallacy. So I'm going to start off by telling you about my food blog because I was a food blogger for several years out of my genuine passion for baking. And I thought that I could just build something there and incorporate that passion into it. So I invested my time, my energy, my resources into learning a bit about SEO, learning food photography, understanding how to write content that actually gets found, developing recipes, building a small audience. I did the work and I got a few results. But at some point, I realized that I wanted to start something different. And the excitement that I had at the beginning started to fizzle out. And the work that I used to enjoy, the creative work that I used to enjoy, started to feel like an obligation at a certain point. And the growth also wasn't happening the way that I'd hoped for. But I kept going anyway. Not because things were turning around, but because I'd already put so much into it. All that learning, all those recipes, all of the supplies that I'd purchased, how could I just walk away from that? And the second thing that I walked away from was my Amazon side hustle. So essentially, it's the same story, but a different side hustle. I did the research, I sourced the products, I spent money that felt very significant at the time, trying to get things off of the ground. And I was learning a whole new world of e commerce and logistics and margins, you name it. And again, at some point, I just started to feel like this wasn't the right direction for me. And it wasn't because I failed at it. It was because just the fit just wasn't there for me. The energy wasn't there. I wasn't really motivated to get really good at it. And I just didn't see the business in my future. But again, I decided to stay longer than I probably I decided to overstay in that area, because of what I'd already put in. And that is the sunk cost fallacy. And this is what it actually is. So I want to name it very clearly for you. It's essentially when you make decisions based on what you've already invested. So like your time, your money, your energy, and you stay in situations, you make decisions based on what you have invested rather than like what's actually ahead of you and what you desire. So what happens with the sunk cost fallacy is that the past investment feels like it's at stake. Like if you leave, you lose it. If I went and invested my money in a course and I didn't like it, I would stick it through because I've already spent the money on it. So I don't want to lose that, right? It's kind of like staying is the only way to honor what you've already given, right? But here's the thing, and I think this is the reframe that has helped me. It's that the past investment is already spent. It's gone essentially. You cannot recover it by staying. The real question, and the question that I think we should all be asking ourselves in these situations, is what do we want the future to look like from here? Because I think more often than we tend to admit, we can stay in something that isn't right because we can't psychologically let go of what we've already put into it. And that is like, it's just wild when you're in that situation. So I ended up stopping the food blog. I ended up stopping the Amazon business. And when I left, I didn't leave with nothing. I left with a whole lot because from that food blog, I learned about content creation. I learned how to write for an audience, how to think about SEO. I learned how to build something from scratch with no playbook. I think that was the first time I built my own website. And I started to learn about HTML and CSS and all that good stuff. And I learned that I could create consistently and that I actually enjoyed the creative process. And from the Amazon business, I learned a lot more about e-commerce, about product research, about a completely different world of business that I didn't understand before. And I learned that I could figure out complex systems I like had never experienced or encountered before. I also learned a lot about my own tolerance for risk and just, you know, operations and things along those lines that I wouldn't have known otherwise. And what's ironic is that um, pursuing my Amazon side hustle actually is what changed my corporate career, because through that side hustle, I started to learn more about advertising and Facebook ads. And then I was able to pivot into digital marketing in my corporate job. So, what I'm really trying to say here is that none of these things stayed in my side hustles when I left. All of these things came with me. I had so many learnings, both internally, skill set wise, that made that experience worthwhile, even if I decided it wasn't for me anymore. So the investment didn't just disappear when I decided to stop. It just kind of started to expand into other areas that I pursued. And I think that's the real reframe that most of us need around pivoting or changing our minds or quitting. We've been taught that stopping and changing direction equals failure, and that if you start something and you leave it, then you wasted everything that you put in. But the way I see it is, what if just being intentional about stopping with your learnings in hand is actually a form of alignment? And what if knowing when something isn't right for you anymore and being willing to act on that is actually a skill? Because every time I've left something that wasn't working, and it wasn't not out of fear, not out of laziness, not out of like a lack of clarity, but just that knowing that this isn't the direction for me, I think I've positioned myself to be more available for opportunities that are a good fit for me. And the sunk cost fallacy is really dangerous because it keeps you invested in a past that honestly cannot be recovered and cannot be changed. The past is done with and it's gone. Letting go is going to make you available for a better future, a more exciting future. And the past investment is still pouring skills into you and helping you shift your mindset, helping you build that foundation for the next thing. And I also want to touch on something that I think is maybe particularly common or true for like first generation kids, especially. I think we're often taught to finish what we start, and that persistence is a virtue, and that, leaving is maybe a weakness to a certain extent. And I agree that persistence is a virtue, most definitely. But it's a virtue when you're persisting towards something that's actually a good fit for you, that actually feels right for you. But the persistence towards something that is misaligned, to be honest, I just see that as very expensive loyalty. And that expensive in all areas. It's gonna cost you your peace. It's gonna cost you your happiness. It might cost you your well-being. So you are allowed to update and change your decisions when you have new information. In fact, it is wise to do so. That is not inconsistency. That is not failure. That is honestly just wisdom.